On Thanksgiving, my mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "Madison deserves that 12 million more than you do." 10 minutes earlier, she had barely asked about my life. Then our neighbor found an article about the software deal I had kept private, and suddenly everyone wanted to know how much I had and why I had not told them. My sister stared at me like I had stolen something from her. That was when I realized they did not see my success. They saw a payout, and before dinner was over, they would demand all of it. I was 5 when my sister Madison was born almost 2 months early. That night, Aunt Susan woke me before sunrise and helped me stuff pajamas into a small duffel bag while the hallway light cut across my bedroom floor. "Your mom's at the hospital," she said. I remember the fear more than the words. For weeks, I stayed between Susan's place and Grandma Margaret's house while my parents lived around hospital updates. When Madison finally came home, our house changed. Bottles of sanitizer appeared in every room. The air smelled like disinfectant. My mother checked the nursery temperature constantly, and if I coughed once, I was sent away until she decided it was safe for me to come back. At first, I thought I was helping protect my baby sister. Grandma Margaret's kitchen became my favorite place. It smelled like cinnamon and warm butter, and she let me stir batter with a wooden spoon while the radio played softly by the window. I could laugh there without someone telling me to keep my voice down. Back home, I learned to make myself smaller. The family photos changed too. Madison was always in the center, wrapped in someone's arms. I was usually standing at the edge, smiling because I had already learned that being easy made adults happy. I brought home straight A's. Mom glanced at them and went back to Madison's schedule. I won first place at a school science fair. Dad looked at my project board and told me to put it in the garage so nothing dusty got near Madison. Still, I kept trying. When I was 12, I practiced the same piano piece for months because my parents promised they would come hear me play. That afternoon, Madison said she felt sick. Her symptoms were mild, but both of my parents stayed home anyway. I walked onto that stage and saw the 2 seats I had saved for them sitting empty. 2 weeks later, Madison had a small recital. Mom bought flowers. Dad brought the camera. Everyone came. I remember applauding with the rest of the room while something inside me quietly cracked. But I still did not blame Madison. I blamed myself. Maybe if I worked harder, complained less, achieved more, they would finally look at me the way they looked at her. A year later, I would learn just how wrong I was. When I was 13, the stomach pain started during one of Madison's dance competitions. At first, I tried to ignore it. By evening, I was curled on my bedroom floor, sweating through my t-shirt and trying not to cry. Mom answered my call from the auditorium and told me they would be home after Madison's final routine. I called Aunt Susan instead. She took one look at me and drove me to the hospital. Appendicitis. I still remember waking up after surgery and seeing Susan asleep in the chair beside me, her coat folded under her head like a pillow. My parents came later. They brought excuses. That became the pattern. At 18, I graduated near the top of my class. Madison had an event the same day, so neither of my parents came. I walked across the stage, smiled for a picture with Susan, and stopped checking the crowd. College was worse. My parents said money was tight and they needed to protect Madison's future. So I worked whenever I could, ate cheap meals, and learned how to stretch every dollar. A few years later, Madison got a car for her 16th birthday. I stopped asking questions after that. By my mid-20s, I was working in software development and building projects at night from a small apartment. I liked the silence. Computers did not care who the favorite child was. If something failed, I could fix it. If I worked harder, the result usually changed. Eventually, one of my security projects attracted serious interest. Months of negotiations followed. When the deal closed, my share was worth about $12 million. I sat alone at my kitchen counter that night with a takeout container and a glass of water, staring at the number. I did not call my parents. I already knew what Mom would say, something about Madison, so I kept my life simple and kept the deal private. Then Thanksgiving came. I arrived early at my parents' house to help set the table. Mom handed me the good china because the Carters were coming over. Madison was on the couch, scrolling through her phone while Mom worried over whether she looked tired. Patricia Carter arrived with a pie and started talking about a local woman who had recently made millions in a technology deal. My mother barely reacted. Patricia pulled out her phone. Then she stopped. She looked at the screen, then at me. Megan Mitchell. Madison sat upright. Patricia turned the phone toward the table. There was my name, my picture, and the number. $12 million. Nobody spoke. Then I saw my mother's face change. My mother crossed the room so quickly that I almost stepped back. "You never told us," she said, pulling me into a hug. For a second, I froze. I had imagined that hug when I was 12, then again at 18, even in college. During those nights when I came home exhausted from work and still had assignments to finish. Now I finally had it. And somehow, it felt wrong. Dad suddenly wanted to know what I had built, how the deal happened, and whether the $12 million was really mine. Madison asked the question that mattered to her. "So you actually have all that money?" I looked around the room. Nobody asked how many years it had taken. Nobody asked how many times I had failed before something finally worked. Nobody asked whether I was happy. Within minutes, Mom started talking about Madison. "She's been trying to figure out her future," she said carefully. "This could really help her get started." I put down the plate I was holding. "How much help are we talking about?" Mom glanced at Dad. That glance told me they were already thinking beyond a small favor. Dad leaned against the dining table. "You've already built a career. Megan, you know how to take care of yourself." There it was. The sentence I had heard in different forms my entire life. Megan can handle it. Madison needs us more. Madison sat forward. "It's not like you'd be left with nothing. You can make more money." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Mom touched my arm. "We're just saying you have an opportunity to change your sister's life." "And mine?" She blinked. "What about your life for a second?" All I could see were 2 empty seats in a school auditorium. Then Aunt Susan asleep beside my hospital bed. Then the cheap meals in my college apartment while Madison posed beside a car with a ribbon on the hood. Dad sighed. "Don't turn this into some childhood competition." I looked at him. If I had never made that money, would the 4 of you be sitting here figuring out how to change my life? Nobody answered. Madison looked away. Mom's mouth tightened. I had spent 25 years thinking my family gave Madison more because she needed more. That afternoon, I finally understood the uglier truth. They believed my ability to survive without them was proof that I deserved less from them. Again. Mom pulled her hand away. Her voice changed. The sweetness disappeared. "Fine," she said. "If you want us to be completely honest. Then maybe we should be." And the room went still. Mom looked at me across the Thanksgiving table. "If we're being honest," she said, "Madison deserves that $12 million more than you do." For a second, I thought I had misheard her. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen and the faint clink of Patricia setting down her glass. I looked at Mom, then Dad, then Madison. Nobody laughed. Nobody corrected her. Madison actually nodded. Mom continued, "You already have a career. You've proven you can succeed. Madison is still trying to find her place." I stared at her. "So because I figured things out on my own, I should hand over what I earned." Dad exhaled hard. "You're twisting this." "No, I'm repeating it." He lowered his voice like he used to when I was a teenager. "Megan, be reasonable. $12 million is more money than most people will ever see. You can invest again. Build something else." Madison leaned forward. "Exactly. You can make more." I looked at her. She seemed completely serious. That somehow hurt more than anger would have. Mom folded her hands in front of her. "Madison needs one real chance." I almost laughed. One real chance. Images started flashing through my head. My piano recital, my hospital room, my graduation. My first college apartment with the heater turned low because I was afraid of the bill. I looked directly at Dad. "When I needed help with college, what did you tell me?" His jaw tightened. "That was years ago." What did you tell me?" Mom answered instead. "We didn't have the money. You had enough to buy Madison a car. That is not the same thing. Why nobody answered? I turned toward Mom. When I was in the hospital at 13, Aunt Susan was the one sitting beside me. You know Madison had something important that day, and when I graduated, Dad rubbed his forehead. Megan, are we seriously doing this at Thanksgiving? Yes? My voice surprised even me. Not because it was loud, because it wasn't. I think we finally are. Madison shook her head. You've been holding on to all of this forever. I had to. Nobody else remembered. Mom's expression hardened. We gave both of you what you needed. That sentence landed harder than the first one. I looked at her for a long moment. No, you gave Madison what she needed. Then you decided I didn't need anything because I stopped asking. That isn't fair. Was it fair when I stopped expecting you at school events because disappointment hurt less that way? Mom opened her mouth. I kept going. Was it fair when I worked through college while you kept telling me Madison needed a safety net? Dad pushed back from the table. You were always stronger. There it was again. I nodded slowly. And when exactly did surviving without you become proof that I deserved less? He had no answer. Madison crossed her arms. You're acting like we're trying to steal from you. Aren't you? Her face went red. No. We're saying you don't need all of it. Neither do you. That's different. How? She hesitated, then finally said what everyone else had been circling around. Because you already have everything. I almost felt sorry for her. She truly believed it. You have a career, Madison continued. You have opportunities. You have people who respect you. Why should you keep $12 million when that could completely change my life? I looked at Mom. Is that what you want too? She did not look away. I think you should give Madison the money and let her build something for herself. All of it. Not alone. Not help with one goal. The entire $12 million. Patricia shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Dad noticed. This is a family conversation, Patricia quietly said. Then maybe I should step outside. No. The word came out before I even thought about it. Everyone looked at me. I placed both hands flat against the table. No. Stay. Mom frowned. Megan. I spent most of my life wondering if I was imagining this. I'm done protecting everyone from how it looks. Dad's face tightened. Watch yourself. I looked at him. No, one word. And suddenly, for the first time in my life, nobody at that table knew what to do with me. Madison scoffed. So that's it. You get rich and suddenly you're too good for us. This was never about being too good for you. I reached for my purse. It's about finally believing I'm allowed to say no. Mom stood. You would really choose money over your own sister? I stopped. Then I turned back. I already chose family. Her expression changed. What is that supposed to mean? Aunt Susan has a new house. Silence. Mom blinked. You bought Susan a house, I did. Dad stared at me. Why would you do that? That question told me everything, because she came to my school events. She took me to the hospital. She called me in college. She remembered birthdays when I was too busy working to celebrate them. Mom looked wounded. She's your aunt. We're your parents. Then you should understand why this is so hard to say. I swallowed. I didn't help Susan because she asked for my money. She never did. I helped her because she gave me something none of you ever managed to give me consistently. Madison rolled her eyes. What I looked around the table. She showed up. Nobody spoke. I put on my coat. Mom followed me toward the door. You're really leaving Thanksgiving over money? I opened the door. Cold air rushed across my face. I looked back at her. This was never about the money. Then I walked outside. For the first time in 25 years, I did not wait to see if anyone would come after me. The calls started before I reached the end of the street. Mom, Dad, Madison. Then the messages came. Some were angry, some were wounded. A few tried to sound reasonable. I did not argue with any of them. The next morning, I sent one message. I told them I loved them, but my money was not a family account. My career was not something they could redistribute because they thought Madison needed it more. I also told them I would not discuss my finances again. Then I stopped explaining. That was the hardest part. For years, I had believed that if I just found the right words, My parents would finally understand what they had done. Now I understood that boundaries did not require their agreement. Madison posted a video a few days later about people who forgot where they came from after becoming successful. She never mentioned my name, but everyone close to us knew. It did not land the way she expected. Patricia had been sitting at that Thanksgiving table. She knew exactly what had happened. I never asked her to defend me, but I also stopped protecting the version of our family that existed only in public. A few months later, I started spending most of my time in Seattle. Aunt Susan visited often. The first holiday I spent without my parents felt strange. I kept expecting guilt to ruin it. Instead, Susan handed me a mug of coffee, asked what I wanted for breakfast, and nothing about the morning required me to prove my value. That quiet almost made me cry. Back home, things changed too. My parents could no longer afford to support every plan Madison came up with, and I was no longer stepping in. Eventually, she took a steady job, not because I punished her, because for the first time, nobody rescued her from having to build something for herself. Years passed, my work grew. I invested carefully, started new projects, and built wealth far beyond that first $12 million deal. But the money mattered less than I thought it would. I used part of it to help students who were working through school with little family support. Every time I met one of them, I thought about the girl I used to be, eating cheap dinners and pretending she was not tired. My family thought they had lost access to $12 million that Thanksgiving. They were wrong. What they really lost was access to the woman I became. Being the strong one never meant I needed less love. It only meant I learned to survive without it. My family thought $12 million was the most important thing they lost that Thanksgiving. It wasn't. They lost the right to decide my worth, my future, and what I owed them. Sometimes revenge isn't destruction. Sometimes it's simply choosing yourself and walking away with your peace intact. If you've ever been treated like the second choice in your family, share your story in the comments and subscribe for more stories about people who chose themselves.